Welcome to Built for This. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. My podcast features captivating conversations with intriguing people who have found purpose in their lives through their career, family, or life experiences, and just why they were built for this. Through the stories that you will hear, I trust that you will be inspired and encouraged to find just what you were built for. So let's get started. And welcome again into the studio for another episode of Built for This. And this is going to be a fun show today. I'm very happy to have on with me an author, speaker, entrepreneur. We're going to talk a lot about all of that. But David Schnurman is on the show here today. And David, thanks very much for jumping in today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to hearing what we say together.
Well, and I know you do a lot. You do a lot of things, you know, and I love your spirit of exploration. You do a lot of stuff with your family, but also then professionally speaking and entrepreneur, that kind of thing. But also, we'll just start here that I know that you are the CEO of Lawline, and you're helping some continuing education along that line. Let's just start there. Talk a little bit about what you do with that.
Yeah, just to give a sense, Lawline is the largest provider of online continuing legal education in the country. There's 1 million attorneys who need to take courses every year to keep their license up to date. And we make it so easy for them to do it online through our platform and our content. And we just hit about 20 years since we've been doing this.
Wow.
Started it right in law school and had no gray hair. And now I have a lot more.
What was it that, and I want to get into the books that you've written and then just the whole entrepreneur mindset that people can have there. But for a moment, what was it that you saw getting out of law school that you thought, okay, there's a need for this for going forward?
So I was in my second year of law school, and this is 2006.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I think I had one of the first podcasts interviewing entrepreneurs.
Okay.
It was the year YouTube came out. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So just to step back, I graduated college in 1999, thought I was going to start a business the next year. 6 years later, I was still in sales on my fourth sales job, not making that much money, and I was no longer satisfied.
Yeah.
And I just sort of made a decision. I was like, okay, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for me. I'd rather have a career. And that's how I ended up going to law school. While in law school, a couple of things happened that made me question the decision of being a lawyer. And so I just kind of restarted my passion of okay, I'm going to go out there and interview as many entrepreneurs as I can to figure out how to start a business. And in that process, it actually ended up being the most important thing to building my company, building my network, and bringing me to Barcelona because of that podcast, which I can get into.
Yeah.
And there was a moment when I was doing these interviews, I said, well, what if instead of interviewing entrepreneurs, what if I interview lawyers? And I turned those interviews into courses because it's mandatory for lawyers to take these courses. And I sell these courses to lawyers. So my third year of law school, I was going to school 2 days a week, and I was building the business 3 days a week.
Wow. I'm interested in go back to what you said when you decided to interview people about starting a job or starting businesses and being the entrepreneur, that type of thing. What is it that you learned or from those interviews? What was the key thing you were hearing about what it was going to take to be an entrepreneur?
I could share 4 themes of success that I learned that they are cliches.
Yeah.
But cliches are cliches because they're true.
Yeah.
And the first one is, won't surprise you, but it's almost every single entrepreneur said this from different backgrounds, different types of business. They said most people, they talk about doing something, they say they're going to do it, but they don't.
Never do
The
it.
most important thing was a bias towards action and moving things forward. The second most important thing is when you're starting a business, there's going to be naysayers.
Yeah.
Brian, who do you think is the number one naysayer you usually when you start your business?
Yourself?
Okay. Let's say potentially yourself, but who else besides yourself?
Oh, it's going to be your spouse, your friends, anybody close to you.
Totally. It's usually, when you first think of that, you're like, oh, people who you're not close to, but it's those who love you the most, who want to protect you, are the biggest naysayers. And so one of the things that somebody told me once, and I followed it ever since, if someone's going to give you criticism or feedback that something's not good, make sure that person has done what you're talking about. And so they have the experience in that area. If not, just recognize, listen to it, but you don't have to absorb it, especially with those who love you the most. So that was number two. And then I'll say that one more is, well, you have to network.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
running a podcast is the best form of networking, as you know, and then being a guest on a podcast is great. But of course, there's going to events, there's other areas. And so the little things like that help steer me along the way. But the biggest benefit of building my podcast was the people that I met, the guests that I interviewed.
Yeah.
Led to transformed my life.
And I'll agree with that on the guest. Now I want to talk about a couple of your books. One of them, let's just make sure, it's The Fast Forward Mindset: How to Be More Fearless and Focused to Accelerate Your Success. And there it is right there for our people that are watching on YouTube. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit, about the terms fearless and focused, because it seems like those of us who are entrepreneurs, those both are a challenge, maybe at sometimes early on, but to be able to overcome that first step of fear.
Yeah. So the book focuses on what is as an entrepreneur and an individual, what my biggest pain point has been and how I got through it and got over it. And so it's geared towards those who have the same thing. And let me see if you can relate. It's geared towards driven people who often get stuck, and they then, in their stuckness, they want to figure out how to move from thinking about something to actually living it.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is the formula to success and happiness in life. And so the Fast Forward Mindset was a 5-year project to codify from everything from the interviews I did in my first podcast to about 30 the best self-help books, to my experience in scaling my business in the first 10 years, to codify what I needed to be more fearless and focused for the next 20 years, how to get out of my comfort zone more and stay out longer.
Yeah.
And so there's 3 different parts to the book. From most of us we get stuck in making decisions because we don't make the wrong decisions.
Yeah, right.
So I don't want to bore people with all the things that are in the book, because without the context and the stories, it's not there. But I gave the formulas on how to do that. And the first chapter, I get right into it, and I wanted to make it an easy read. So I shared all my, I should say, failures. So my first 5 years of business, we went from 0 to 5 million.
Wow.
The next 5 years of my business, we went from 5 million to 5 million. So we stayed flat, and then we figured out how to double the business again.
Yeah.
And so I went through that process on how we got stuck, how through I don't know, it was like a 6-year period. I went through 3 different chief operating officers, and each time I thought the entire business would fail or implode. And it's really a struggle as an entrepreneur, how we rebuilt the website and we lost the entire development team because it was too hard. So I wanted to share real stories of pain and suffering for entrepreneurs, but also the biggest thing to know, which we sometimes forget, is we always think the challenges are on the outside. We think the challenges are the website that went down, the person who left, the different issues with the CEOs. But really, the only 2 things you can control in your life. Well, I'll ask you, what do you think are the only 2 things to get participation? What do you think the only 2 things you can control in your life are?
Well, it's just what I'm going to do that day, and who the next person I'm going to meet.
Yeah, so it's along those lines, how you think and how you feel.
There you go.
You can't control your boss. You can't control your spouse. You certainly can't control the weather. You certainly can't control the politics unless you're like one of the people really in that seat. And so there's a formula. There's a book called The Success Principles. I actually have it here.
Okay.
So Jack Canfield, do you know who he is?
Yeah, absolutely.
He wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series,
Yes.
but he also wrote The Success Principles. And he had a formula in the book that I read around the time that I needed it, which was around 2012 maybe. And it's called E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. And the challenge is most people in life focus on the event. So an employee left, that's what they all their energy on. And that leads to the outcome versus putting all their energy into, okay, an employee left, how you respond to that. If you put all your energy on the R,
Yeah.
it shifts the outcome versus not. And so like that's the control is your response to an event. And so for me as an entrepreneur, those were really helpful because I was afraid to make decisions. I was afraid to move things forward. And the final thing I'll share is there's a phrase that I would say if you're listening now, take this down, get a pencil or pen and write this down because this is a phrase that will help you move forward. And it's the phrase, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And the reason it's such an important phrase is we tend to label a situation bad 10 times more than we label it good.
Yeah.
So as soon as we label it bad, we experience it as bad. And I've had so many times, we'll use a podcast as an example where, it doesn't feel like it's going the way I thought it would go with a guest or the way I'm even being interviewed.
Yeah.
And if I feel like this is going bad, that's sort of how I'm going to experience it. But if I say, look, good thing, bad thing, who knows? I don't know sort of what's going to happen by the end. It allows you to say yes to more podcasts because you don't have to worry about them going bad because there is no bad. It's just that phrase. So using that will help you a lot to get through things.
Go back to, I was interested in what you were talking about a moment ago about particularly entrepreneurs. They get a point where it's or an idea or something that they are thinking about doing is a big difference to getting to the point where they actually do it. And I find that interesting because that's exactly where I was with this podcast a year ago or so. I had some people encourage me to do it. And so I had it in the back of my mind. I thought, yeah, sure, I used to work in broadcasting. This might be something I want to do. Could get a lot of interesting guests. But it took a long time for me to get to that point to actually do something. And so as entrepreneurs, do you see that as the primary obstacle to get past, to be able to finally get whatever it is they have on their journey ahead of them, that fear of actually starting?
I'll give you a good story to put into sort of context how challenging it could be, especially to do what you've always wanted, your dream, let's just say, or what it is. There's this guy, his name is Craig Valentine, and his dream was to be a keynote speaker, a world-renowned public speaker.
Yep.
And he was working at a job that he really liked, and he was getting paid decently. And he went to his boss and he said, like me and you are today, he goes, Brian, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've decided I'm going to quit because I want to pursue this dream of public speaking. 3 times in a row, his boss kept giving him raises in that meeting. And Brian's like, no, thank you. I mean, Craig was, no, thank you. I'm going to leave. And finally, his boss said, look, we need you here. I'm doubling your salary. And it was such a big raise that Craig finally paused. And he said, you know what? Let me go home. I need to talk to my wife about this because I appreciate that. That's a huge change in my life if that can happen. Where being a public speaker, there's no guarantee of any money.
Yeah.
So he goes home, he talks to his wife, and he realized what he needed to do. So he walks back in the next day and he still quits. And when he said it, when he speaks about this in his keynotes later on, he goes, he realized he was almost too good to be great. He was almost too comfortable in his good life to reach his greatness. And that really resonated with me because there's 2 components for entrepreneurs. And is one, we're either had a little bit of success and we're comfortable and we're afraid to get to our greatness. And I can say potentially that resonates with me and who I am. And the other part is, you're just not even sure where to focus on and you don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So you're afraid to get started. And there's a whole process to get through that as well. But yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. I think the challenge for most entrepreneurs, and this is what the book really focuses on, is it's not necessarily not knowing what to start. It's starting a lot of things, but not finishing them.
Yeah.
And so, they pivoting a lot or starting something and just getting out of your comfort zone and then something happens and you're like, oh my God, I made a mistake. And then you just go back to your comfort zone. And so and that's me. Like, that's who I am. I'm
Yeah.
ADHD, lots of ideas. And so I wrote this to give me the structure to move forward, to decide to fly to Barcelona and move there with my family and pack 11 suitcases for 2 years. It's not a coincidence. I finished my book, The Fast Forward Mindset, in 2019.
Yep.
And then 8 months later, I picked up with my family, and it was more fearless and focused. And I moved to Barcelona because I used the framework. I try to like eat my own dog food and see if it actually works.
I want to talk about that. That's a great segue in. And you've written a book about it, 11 Suitcases, How Moving Abroad Changed a Family Forever. So you load up your family. I can relate a little bit. There you go. For our YouTube viewers. Be sure and pick that up. I have a little bit of I didn't move to Europe, but I moved from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, if you're familiar where that is.
Where you are? Well, how long were you in Martha's Vineyard?
I'm in Texas. I was only in Martha's Vineyard.
Now you're back in Texas.
I'm back in Texas. I was only in Martha's Vineyard a year.
Okay. How old were you?
It was, okay, so at that time I was in my early 40s.
Okay.
Had kids, in middle school, elementary. So we chalk it up as a life adventure. Packed up everything.
And did you do it for work or just for the adventure? Okay,
well, I had vacationed there for a number of years with family. Long story there. Had vacationed there and had dreamed about, what if I lived on this island? How could I live on this island? Well, I found out I really couldn't live on that island. So that's what I found out in the year I was there. But I thought this would be wild to live here. So I found out that I could apply for a radio job, and they had a radio station, and I got hired one summer while I'm vacationing there. And they said, yeah, we'd like to hire you. So I pack up my entire family, and I'm going to let you tell your story because people are more interested in that than this.
No, totally.
Pack up my family and everything I have and move from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, thinking I'm going to live there the rest of my life on this beautiful beach, this island, and work at this radio station. And it was magical. But it was a difficult place to live probably for a long period of time. But I have no regrets. Our family never had any regrets. It was an experience, a journey. It was magical. And we experienced everything you could experience about living there on an island at all seasons. And it was wonderful. And then we moved back to Texas. So that's my packing up 11 suitcases and moving somewhere. But what was it like to load your family up and move to Spain?
So just to take, for 30 seconds, just to go back 4 years to 2015, we weren't like, it wasn't like we had this dream to move to Spain. In 2015, I had 3 kids, six years old and under, and we were just struggling putting them to bed at night. And I asked friends for help, and somebody recommended this book, 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family. And I bought the book, I started reading it, and one of the questions said, and one of the thoughts in it said, in order to help you put your kids to bed tonight, you need to get something to help you inspire where you want to be in 10 years from now. Yeah. And so it had you write down this vision and write what was unique about you. We ended up writing all these things, and at the last line, we put in something that was inspired who I wanted to be, which was experience life through travel. It didn't really mean anything because what did that, maybe vacations?
Yeah.
But what I did do is I told everybody about that. I told the right person, who I met through my podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
I told the right person who introduced me to a family who just came back, this is in 2015, from living in Barcelona for 1 year. And I met with him. I'm like, oh, wow, thank you. This is a pipe dream. I love this. Never in my wildest dreams did I actually think that would be us. For 4 years, we talked about it.
Yeah.
A dozen times or more. Then finally, in 2019, I wrote the book. And, it was like, okay, well, maybe this is something that's more possible. And my twins were going from elementary school to middle school.
Yeah.
And my wife just said, look, why don't we take the first step? Why don't we take action? And why don't we just apply to the school where our friend went to, where the kids went to, and see if they get in?
Yeah.
And so in February of 2019, we applied to the school. A couple months later, they got in. And we're like, well, why don't we just apply for a visa and see what happens? And that was a long process.
I bet.
And
yes,
then
of course.
The third step was, this was an interesting step. Why don't we tell our parents and our friends that we've made the decision to go even though we haven't fully decided yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that will help give us
Bounce
confidence.
it off of them.
Yeah, don't tell them we're bouncing because you don't want their opinion.
No.
Because look, going back, this is I'm not kidding. I listened to what I learned in my podcast, but I've told you about the first thing in my podcast where don't listen to the negativity of naysayers.
Right.
My parents never moved abroad with their family, and so I didn't want to hear the reasons from them because they love me of why we shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I didn't ask them, even though we weren't sure. And then the final step was my wife and I went there. We found an apartment. And we put a deposit down. So before you knew it, within 7 months, by August of 2019, we were packing the 11 suitcases and loading the kids onto a plane to Barcelona. It was originally supposed to be for a year.
Mm-hmm.
7 months in, something unexpected happened. COVID happened.
Yep.
And we got stuck in the strictest lockdown in Europe for 52 days. The kids could not leave the apartment. And it actually ended up being a good thing, bad thing, who knows, because then everything opened up.
Yeah.
But because of that, we ended up staying a second year. The book is about the first year, and it sort of leaves people hanging with like what we were thinking about doing that summer and the next year. But it was more about like us adjusting to the new community and then dealing with, the pandemic and getting through it.
Well, talk about, and it just sounds so fascinating to me because it parallels a lot with what I went through. We also didn't confer with our closest relatives because we knew they would say that that's the craziest thing you could ever want to do. Why are you doing that? You're leaving your job, you're leaving all that kind of stuff. So we didn't either have no regrets. But I'd like to know what you learned maybe about yourself or your family, challenges that you overcame in life that would benefit you after you came back to the States and then life continued on. What were the learning lessons you had?
Yeah, there was a couple things that were really clear that if anybody's listening, this is a good moment, again, to take the pencil and write it down because number one is, I'll just share one more story, and then I'll give the first lesson.
Yeah, do.
Like looking back was when we arrived, it was of course amazing, but I did have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Just, I don't know. I mean, you meet all these amazing people from all over the world. And then one night I was invited to a barbecue for new parents at the kids' school.
Mm-hmm.
And the dean looked at us and said, look, you guys are like new kids in middle school. You're trying to figure out where the right place to sit in the cafeteria is because you're trying to meet all these new parents. He goes, this year, you're going to be invited to things. You're going to be invited to WhatsApp groups, to book clubs in Spanish, to hikes that you think are too difficult, to trips to cities you can't pronounce. And he goes, you have one job. Your job, whether you're tired, whether you just want to stay home and order takeout, your job is to say yes. To say yes to the mess and the magic of it all, because that's how you're going to get the most out of your experience for the year. And that's why you came here. And it just reframed my imposter syndrome from feeling like I was out of place to be like, I'm here because I want to experience life through travel. And I started saying yes right away. A quick example was like, there was a museum tour the next day for new parents.
Yeah.
I normally wouldn't go. We went. We ended up meeting some of our best friends for the whole experience there. And so when you think about what we did before we went, we wrote down this vision for where we wanted to see our family in 2025, which was to experience life through travel.
Yeah.
We arrive, we start saying yes to things that we feel like are out of our comfort zone. And so I realized what we did is we were being intentional about what we wanted, even if we didn't know exactly what that would do, but we wrote it down and we got it, and that helped move us forward. So like when I met, when you start meeting people, and I wrote the book and I was intentional about wanting to travel, and I had met this person, and I was like, well, I guess we got to travel. And I would say a month into it, I asked my daughter, who was 10 at the time, I'm like, what has it been like since we've moved here? How has the experience been for you? She goes, I thought it was going to be a lot tougher than it was, but it's actually not that. Hasn't been that challenging to meet new friends and to get used to the new culture. And I'm like, I know, me too. I'm like, what does that tell you about other things that you think are going to be challenging? She goes, well, I guess those things that I think are also going to be challenging, maybe they won't be as hard as I think as well. And I was like, yes, exactly. Like that was such an amazing lesson so early on for her to get. And so like those nuggets were happening throughout the trip. And the reason I wrote the book is I was journaling every single day publicly while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knew what we were doing, and people I didn't even know knew what we were doing. And that became part of our journey as well, to like share the ups and downs of of our journey.
Did you and you kind of touched on it right there with you and your daughter, but did you see or the takeaway when you came back about the life benefits of investing in others, of meeting
Yeah.
other people and then investing in them, which we do as entrepreneurs anyway, but perhaps it was magnified even better on the travel aspect of it.
Well, first off, like this book and the experience was always about our family,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about our journey together. 80% of the time that you spend with your children are before they're the age of 18.
Right.
Like you're physically with them. And that 2 years that we were together, learning new culture, learning new language, getting stuck in the pandemic, traveling to so many amazing places, we were all like uncomfortable and getting out of our comfort zones and doing new things and learning new things together. So we were all like building these core value memories for life. And when we came back to the US, we made a decision that we wanted to continue doing these big adventurous trips every year, and not that just have to be, we want to experience life through travel.
Yeah.
And what I found so great about that is it became our kids who would be the ones who'd be like, why don't we do this next? Let's go here next. And in these, Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, Israel, like all these places that are not just like a beach vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the children who say, where should we go next, will be the adults who say, why should we limit ourselves?
Yeah.
And I think there's a direct correlation to, investing in your kids, getting them to travel, whether it's 100 miles from your house or 1,000 miles or 10,000, will help grow confidence in them as they get older. And that's my thesis. And I think there's a lot of research and other stories from other people to back that up as well.
I want to circle back a little bit to the entrepreneur side of things, but it can even be appropriate and adaptable to the family dynamics, I think, as well. One thing that you talk about, one of the things that we as entrepreneurs need to face and maybe have trouble with is not only getting past boundaries and that type of things, but accountability. How important is that of being, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be accountable to other people, to yourself, and to your vision of what you want to be.
That was one of my more challenging things early on in my career, which was making a commitment and sticking with it.
Yeah.
And I would be the person who would like at home tell my wife, I'm gonna clean the dishes and not do that, which sounds small,
Yeah.
but it was like the biggest challenge in our marriage when we had young kids.
Yep.
At work, I would tell my employees we have a meeting, and then I would cancel them last minute. And in my mind, I'd be like, well, they understand I'm a busy boss, instead of me saying like they're the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to the book that I mentioned before, the Jack Canfield book,
Yes.
Principle number 54. Again, another moment, just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
write it down, was keep your commitments. And he shared in the book, he's like, people who don't keep their commitments, they feel worse about themselves, and other people look to them worse on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, like, I was like, okay, I need to be accountable, right? And I need to start keeping more commitment. So I thought about what is the hardest thing I can commit to right now. And at the time, the furthest I ever ran was a 5K.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that scared me the most was a marathon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I committed to a marathon, and in 4 months, what's amazing is, I think millions of people at this stage, I don't know how many, but like you can take somebody who wasn't a runner like me, and in 4 months, you can turn them into a marathon runner.
Wow.
And the reason is there's a training plan, right? That's time tested,
Mm-hmm.
that has exactly what to do, when to do it. If you do this in 4 months, you can run a marathon. It has the actual goal,
Yeah.
which is 26.2 miles. So the only thing you need to focus on when you're running the marathon is being mentally tough.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge with accountability in the real world, there's generally not like a time-tested training plan to help you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's not a clear goal usually. of where you're trying to get to. And then you have to be mentally tough at the same time. And so that does make it more challenging to do it. And there's a couple ways to help with that accountability, which I started implementing from that I put in the book that have helped me moving forward.
I like your use of the word commitment there. Is that something that gets lost in the shuffle too much for entrepreneurs in this day and age that we live of, a lot of entrepreneurs, even though they have very visionary, they might be so tied up in their own things, or we live in a world where like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to blow that off, or I'm not going to go to these 12 networking meetings because I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to commit to that. But the idea of commitment, the great example there was with the marathon, that if there's no commitment there, you're not going to finish 26 miles. But your thoughts about how important commitment is for someone who is going to live the entrepreneurial life.
I'll give another sort of framework on that helped me realize how important it is. Jerry Seinfeld, when he was a young comedian,
was one of my favorites, by the way.
Awesome. So maybe you know the story.
Yeah.
He was a young comedian. He was trying to figure out how to make the best jokes. And he asked a more experienced comedian at the time, what's the best way to do it? And he said to him, instead of doing what most people do, where you take one day a month and you write all your jokes, you should write 3 jokes a day, but write them every single day. Because then your goal is never to break the chain of writing the jokes every single day. And instead of you focusing on like, oh my God, I got to write great jokes every day, you put all your energy on the chain, not breaking the chain.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much that has made it so much easier for me to keep my commitments. One is, for an example, I want to write a LinkedIn post every weekday. If I was too focused on like the likes and the views and all that, it would be too hard for me to do that because but I'm so focused on not breaking that chain of writing the post that even if it's not as good as I wanted to, at least I've hit that goal. And you can apply that to many things in life where you do less, but you do it every day. And that will help, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that book by James Clear, which has sold 1 trillion copies. It talks about like, if you already have a habit in your life, you should stack another habit on top of that to make it a little bit easier to do something. So if you, I don't know, meditate every morning for 5 minutes and you wanted to start doing push-ups, do 20 push-ups after you meditate because you're already doing that habit. So that's another sort of hack that has been helpful as well.
What about the phrase stuck in our comfort zone in the workplace or just in life? It seems to be, well, that's the easy answers. I'm not going to change my status quo or what I'm doing. It'd be too hard. I can't jump out there and be an entrepreneur. I can't take that leap of faith. But how challenging do you think that most people face that kind of a thing before they want to find their next journey?
For me, and again, I think there's millions of us out there who are driven people who get stuck a lot, right? And we want to, like I said, move from thinking to living it. Happiness and comfort are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
And so that's the struggle, right? Like you think of the entrepreneur who sells their business, they go live on an island like Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
After a year or whatever, not even, they're bored and they're ready to figure it out. And I think it's just trying to understand. There's 2 people. There's the person who literally has a job and they are very happy and they're not looking for upward movement. They're not looking to challenge.
Yeah.
I think that's more rare, but like, that's fine. That's the comfort zone. But I think it's most people who are comfortable in some form and are trying, it's not that they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They don't know where to start or how to get that going. And like that, I think for many is the struggle. And that's, again, that's what the fast forward mindset was trying to address, was like, okay, first that person who's like Craig Valentine, who wants to leave his job, but he's too good. He's too good to be great. I think that's a lot of people's challenge. And so I purposely wrote the book for somebody who can like be like me, who takes a lot of action without figuring out the full plan, like the marathon plan.
Yeah.
And then I provide very quick strategies to prevent you from falling back into your comfort zone right away, which was something that happened to me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I approached it versus like the old school method. Like, here's a full business plan, spend 4 months planning and like, I just bias towards action and then moving very quickly to, to getting the focus that you need to keep moving forward.
I know that you have a lot of opportunities to speak to people, all kinds of either business or whatever, but I know you do also speaking to youth, and I'm particularly interested in that and maybe what message you have for our youth today, whether it's because it seems like so many, certainly at the high school level, even at the collegiate level, maybe not really sure yet even what is their path, what's their vision, and for all of us who maybe have been down the entrepreneurial way, you may change paths 3 or 4 times. So what message do you like to try to pass along to that age group?
So I think now more than ever, you need to really focus within like the mental strategies.
Yeah.
And so I did a TEDx talk for high school students, and what I shared with them was when I was in high school, my good friends thought, they were being funny, but they were calling me oaf, which is like a clumsy, stupid person.
Yeah.
And the reason they called me oaf was because I grew tall really quickly. And so like it started in basketball. I'd be playing basketball and I'd be a little like, uncoordinated.
Mm-hmm.
And they meant it as a joke, but it ended up lasting all of high school. And I shared in the TEDx talk, one of my struggles then and even past then was not so much what they called me. It was what I ended up calling myself because I couldn't respond to them effectively. So they're like, "You're an oaf." And I would be like, not knowing what to say. And then I'd be saying to myself that I felt like I was an idiot or stupid because I couldn't respond to them. And I guess what I would share with people, that same thing happened in law school. The same thing happens as an entrepreneur. And I know a lot of people, and especially students, feel that way internally, and to put that out there. And I just wanted to like re-emphasize that every single person feels like the oaf who can't respond to something, is not sure, and calls himself, bad names. And so the negative self-talk is something that we all deal with at every stage of life, not just when you're a kid trying to figure out your next path.
With all that you've accomplished in the different paths you've been down, the family trip and living abroad and all the experiences, I mean, I like the word, I think I found it in something you've done here, is the word possibility. Is that a good encapsulating word to have people grasp a hold of, that just reach for possibility in your career and in your personal path?
Helen Keller, my dad always loves to say this quote that she gave, and it sort of embodies that. She said, "Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Without hope and confidence, nothing gets accomplished." And I'm going to say it again because my dad would probably said it to me for years, and it went in one ear and out the other, until I was dealing with a lot of struggles as a business owner. And I started to think about it. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. I started thinking about faith. I'm like, well, faith is used in religion. And why is faith used in religion? Because you have to have faith, right? That whatever religion you have, that is the God exists.
Right.
Because there's no proof. There's no it's all about faith. And then I realized, well, the same as faithful you have to be in religion, that level. Think about whatever that level is for who you are. Now you got to apply that faith to optimism. So that is how strong you need to be optimistic about your life and your success. Because neuroplasticity, what your thoughts control who you are. And so that is exactly it. And so it's so easy, so much easier said than done for all of us. But I don't know, the more I am teaching, you're doing me a service. You are doing me a gift right now, because by me talking to you about the things that I know and I've learned over the years, I'm reinforcing it to myself right now. I'm reteaching my neurons in my brains about these important things. And I could say this, I would say this every day if I could. And so that's what I would share with people. Understand that quote, but understand the power of reshaping your brain just by talking it out to other amazing people.
It is a very powerful quote and everything you're doing. I do have one more question, and I'm going to end it on a light note here.
Sure.
You mentioned Jerry Seinfeld, one of my favorites of all time. I know that you've done some work with the New York Comedy Club. Now, what has that been like for you? Throw down some few dad jokes, or just to get up and do improv like that? Is that a great outlet for you to be able to get up and do something like that?
That was an amazing experience. It was actually a one-time project that I hope to redo again, and it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah.
I spent 3 months working with a comedy coach to do an 11-minute bit, and that was 3 months, 2 hours once a week, writing down. I think every minute of the bit was an hour and a half of writing things down.
Yeah.
And that's how when you see a 10-minute bit or 12-minute bit, just know that is dozens of hours of preparation and work and working through it all. And so it's a lot of self-deprecation. And I ended up loving every second of it, because I was able to express myself, have some fun, and the audience really reacted to it.
Yeah.
And I truly want to do it again. It's just getting myself to commit to the time to preparing for it and then figuring out where I want to do it. So I mean, short of that, doing improv is another fun thing to do as well.
All right. Well, I think people should check that out on YouTube, and be sure and get the books. David Schnurman, it was been my guest. You saw the books on the show, and David, great insight, great things to share with our viewers and listeners. And I appreciate you being on the show today.
I appreciate you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Built for This. Be sure to follow Built for This on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Join me on the next episode when I will share entertaining stories of inspiration, encouragement, and purpose-driven experiences. What are you built for? Built for This is produced and recorded by Heart Media DFW.